I'm Rachel. I'm here with Ben from Moto Camp Nerd because I am a Moto Camp beginner and he is a Moto Camp nerd. And he is going to talk me through everything that I should be aware of and all the equipment that I should probably take with me on my trip to Alaska because I have this romantic idea that I'm just going to go and sleep on the side of the road and it's all going to be dandy. And Ben's going to tell me how to do that in a way that I'm not going to freeze or get eaten by a bear. Over to you, Ben.
I'm Ben. I'm the owner of Moto Camp Nerd. We started in our garage in 2020. And then 2022, we actually have a brick and mortar store in Archdale, North Carolina. We're a very, very small business. It's just me and my wife, Mary.
I rode my bike across all 48 contiguous states and am about to next month ride it up to Alaska from Montana. My dream is that I'm going to camp along the way. I really don't know what I'm doing. I know we spoke before and I told you the last time I bought camping equipment, I just went with recommendations on random blogs and sites that I could find and anything with 5 stars. And I realized during my trip that that was a critical error. And a lot of the equipment I bought let me down because I went based off of reviews rather than actual knowledge. So I would hate to do that again. And I would also hate for anyone else to do that. I would love for you and I to walk through how I should go about this trip, what I should consider, and maybe we could look at, a lot of people consider this piece of equipment, but really all you need is this rope and, horn. I don't know. I've watched some Bear Grylls. I think I'm fine. I'll be good.
Yeah. Let's. So we'll do a rundown. I've got a general idea of what you ride, but we'll go through it again, and then your luggage setup, and we'll just kind of go through. Normally, what I do with everybody is start with the ground and work our way up with the sleep system to the tent, and then whatever odds and ends we want to throw in there. And then just kind of go over like the nuances of different equipment and why certain equipment works better or certain gear works better for certain situations.
Amazing. And obviously it all needs to be 100% spider proof. So
Yes, I wish it was 100% spider proof, but even for me, it's not.
I'm using the same motorcycle that I did the rest of the trip on, which is an INT650. It's a Royal Enfield cafe racer style bike. It is not your traditional touring bike. Everything on it is stock and there's no luggage rack. I use the Kriega US bag system and they all attach to each other. So I have two 20 liters that attach to the sides of a 30 liter. This is actually one of the 20 liters. All of my camping stuff fit in one of these.
I do love the Kriega systems just because they do attach really well to almost any bike. I'm assuming it attaches to the frame rails, and then those two bags I know attach to the sides.
I've got sub loops on the frame and the main bag attaches to those sub loops. I've got it down pretty good now, but occasionally manage to just attach the bag to itself and not the bike. It's always a lovely moment. You're like, wow, it's just feeling so light and free. And you turn around and your bag's still at the hotel.
Yeah,
So,
let's not do that.
yeah, I touch all the things. I seem to have not done that for a while, but no, it's a really efficient and good system. And I'm an efficient packer. I take very little with me. I take as little as possible.
Which is really good because a lot of people will. They'll take all their clothes, like 5 pairs of socks, 5 pairs of underwear, 10 shirts, 2 pairs of pants, or 5 pairs of pants, like really overdo it.
I'm feral. I turn into this feral little troll from under the bridge when I go on motorcycle trips.
But 20 liters is completely reasonable to get a whole camping setup in, so that's not going to be difficult at all. When are you going on this trip? Oh, July, August?
July 17th.
40 to 50 at night, maybe, even down into the 30s potentially. Of course, you don't know what the weather's going to be like and what kind of, cold front you may have coming in. So we'll have to keep that in mind for the sleeping bag because you want to keep it light and small, but the higher the temperature rating, the lower the temperature rating. So if you're getting down into the 30s, getting a bag that's properly rated for that is going to be bigger than something that's rated for 45.
Yeah.
So your 45-degree bag could pack, you know, maybe 5 liters or less compressed. But when you get down to 30 and 20, your bag is going to be more like 8 to 10 liters.
This is where my ignorance kicks in, and probably where my mother liked the house freezing cold when we were kids. It was almost Victorian, and if you were cold, it was like just put on some extra layers. Like we would have the windows open at night because fresh air was king. So if you're in a sleeping bag that is rated to about 45, what about putting on your hoodie and your trackies? Does that work?
Trackies is a new one for me. I've not heard that one
Tracksuit
before.
bottoms, tracksuit bottoms. I go so English when I talk about these things. What about your hoodie and your trackies, mate? What about that? Isn't that not good enough? Does that, like, what level of a difference are we talking about if you're in those sleeping bags?
It does. The sleeping bag ratings you see advertised are all lies. Whenever you see a sleeping bag advertised and it says 45 degrees, that is generally the lower limit or the survival limit is what they refer to. So every bag is going to have a lower limit and a comfort rating. All the sleeping bag ratings are set though by this dummy in a test bag, and that dummy is wearing all the base layers. So you're going to have your pants, a shirt, socks, even like a neck gaiter and a beanie to get to that accurate rating. So that's the first thing to remember is all of those ratings are set by base layers, and then also a sleeping pad that's insulated, and usually it's around 4.5 to 5 in that kind of range. So insulated pad and all your base layers will determine the rating. So then any layers you add on top of that would be a beneficial addition.
So your hoodie and your trackies.
Yes, will
And when we
matter.
say a
So
dummy, I'm assuming we're talking about like a plastic, not real human, not like
yeah,
some idiot. Like,
correct.
oh, we've got dummy Dave coming in. Hello, Dave. Have you got your base layers on, mate? In you go into this -20 Alaskan experience. Enjoy.
Are
Right.
you
Okay.
cold? Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
well, we need
Oh,
more.
you need tea. You need tea. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And Dave comes out like, I hate my job. But he's a
Yeah,
dummy, so he doesn't. Yeah. Okay.
he's paid well.
Yeah.
Some brands do a really good job of putting on the bag, like this is the advertised rating or the you won't die rating, and then this is the comfort rating. And generally that is within 10 degrees. So if it's advertised at 30, comfort really is going to be like 40 degrees. And I tell everybody too, because like you said, you sleep hot. So knowing that, you may be able to shed layers and kind of work within that 30 to 40 degree range. And a 30-degree bag may be comfortable for you at 35 with layers, and it may be 30. There's so many different body types and so many different, people, how they acclimate their temperature and stuff. There's so many other variables to that with like humidity and it's kind of hard to narrow it down to say an exact science on, yes, this bag is going to work exactly for you at this temperature.
So when someone's looking then at a sleeping bag and it says, yeah, comfort level 40, but survival level 30, well, whatever that window is, they also need to factor in their own body fat, their own comfort level of, okay, but when I'm at home and it's 80 degrees in my house and I have all the windows closed and I'm wearing all my warm layers and I'm still cold, I probably am not going to have the same comfort level as what Dummy Dave has.
Exactly. Yep.
So they may also want to carry a hot water bottle.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people do that. They'll have like a little camp stove and yeah, just heat up some water before you go to bed, throw it in there with you. Especially if you're, and on this trip, I assume you will be kind of floating back and forth between temperatures, and you probably will be pushing that limit to keep your pack size small, but staying warm and not dying, or at least freezing to death.
Yeah, I watched that episode of whichever Yellowstone spin-off it was, and there's a woman in there who freezes to death. Actually, there's a couple of people who freeze to death in Montana, and I just thought that looked like a really sucky way to go. So, opting out. I don't have a lot of body fat, probably more than I'd like to now I moved to America. There's so many delicious food here that I've gained an insulatory layer that I didn't have before. So that's comforting. If you were looking at 3 different sleeping bags, whether that's, if you're like, no, this is the brand you should look at, or here are 3 brands.
Keeping in mind pack size, the first one generally that comes to mind is the Big Agnes Lost Ranger 3-in-1. And that one, because, and I usually recommend this for anybody who's doing like a cross-country trip or is going to be in several different climates as they travel, because it uses 2 sleeping bags and it uses like a layering system to kind of get down. And it comes in a 15 degree and a 0. I wouldn't really recommend the 0 because that's most of the time overkill.
Is that Celsius or Fahrenheit?
That is Fahrenheit.
Oh, whew, that's cold.
It does pack a little bit bigger, again, because we're getting down to colder temperatures. You can probably compress it down to about 10 liters. But you do have this nice fancy, and maybe we'll do like a little picture pop-up or something, but you have a nice fancy outer bag that attaches to the sleeping pad, which a lot of people like for this kind of bed-like feel, so you don't roll off your pad. And then you use a side sleeper bag inside of that, and those 2 layered together will get you down to the 15 degree rating, which is the fake rating. So comfort's really going to be 25. So if you're getting down to the 30s at night, that would probably be plenty, if not more than enough. Another bag that I'm thinking of because of the pack size is the Sea to Summit Ember down quilt or the Thermarest Chorus quilt. Both of those are you familiar with quilts at all?
I'm in my mind I'm going old school. Someone has stitched together lots of hexagonal pieces of material and they tend to be pretty large, and I'm thinking I'm going to wear it as a cape.
No, not in the, well, I guess you could wear it as a cape, but no, not necessarily in this situation. So, so the backpacking quilts, I jokingly say that it's essentially a mummy bag in disguise because it's like a mummy sleeping bag. Just imagine cutting off the hood and then splitting the back open on it, and so you have this open back that's a little bit wider, but it's still a spot you can put your feet. So you've got this foot box to keep your feet warm, and then it's just kind of like a blanket. They come in all shapes and sizes. I say the Sea to Summit and the Thermarest because they're much wider. And I mean, most people don't like a mummy bag because they're too tight. Like you don't want to sleep. Pretty much everybody that I've ever talked to, and 95, 99% of the riders that come into the store, they just want to sleep like they do at home. They don't want to sleep, oh, I don't want to sleep like I'm camping, because then you're in this like fetal position and it's uncomfortable and you end up not sleeping. And so my goal is always to make sure people get the best sleep possible, the most comfortable sleep, and stay warm and don't die. Uh, and they do have less material, so they pack smaller because there's less material for that. The Chorus does come in a 20 degree, and the Sea to Summit Ember quilt comes in a 30 degree. So with that, you would be around that 5-liter pack size, so about half, but you're gonna have to wear layers. I mean, even wearing like a good puffy jacket underneath or in the sleeping bag would net you another 5 to 10 degrees on that. So a 30 degree bag is going to be comfortable at 40. Add another, add a layer to that, and you may get down into 35 to 30, especially if you do sleep hot at night.
A couple questions, probably starting with one, how important is a mat? And 2, self-inflation or no? And 3, if the answers to 1 is yes, important, and the answer to 2 is not very important, then the third one is which mats do you look at? So starting with, how important is a sleeping mat?
The sleeping pad is the most important. I generally tell people, like, if you're limited to a budget, make sure you get something really good, because that's really, well, kind of with your sleeping bag too, you're building a sleep system, so they kind of work together. That's going to make or break your experience, especially for new campers and people getting out there. The key thing on the sleeping pads is the R value, which is your resistance to heat transfer. So basics in, thermodynamics and heat, right? The heat wants to go to the cold and it's going to try to warm it up. So the earth is cold, so it's heat's going to the earth to try to warm it up underneath of you. So we don't want that. So a lot of these have different types of insulation and mylar layers to help keep the heat to you. The second thing is the type. So we've got the foam ones, the self-inflating, which don't really self-inflate, as you've found out, which are really, some of them are really thin, and some of them are like super thick and cushy, kind of like the Mega Mats, which are great for car camping, but I think the pack size on those is probably, what, 2 foot or so? And so, for example, we only stock air pads. So here's one of them. This is the Rapide. This is probably the most popular one. And so this would be like the balance between comfort and pack size. In comparison, this is the Campmeister Deluxe. Let me tame it.
Why is it whenever we put anything that's got the word Meister in it, you automatically think that's the one? That's got to be good. It's something Meister.
Master.
And then you put in Deluxe, as I'm like, oh, sounds luxury.
Well, I guess they got their naming convention right then.
Oh yeah, I am that audience. I'm like, that must be the best. But yeah, the sizes between that are, that's a big difference. Why would you pick one over the other?
So this is the one I usually say, if people have a hard time sleeping at camp or just need more comfort than anything, go with this one. This one actually has stretchy fabric on the top, so you get a little bit more bounce to it. This one has been the best as far as pack size, the balance of pack size and comfort. And that's just an example of like packing in small is relative to every situation. And so some people think that the self-inflating pads are small, and they are compared to like a cot or compared to like the air mat you get at Walmart that's, the one for your guests that come over at night, that's like this big. And so I try to make sure everybody understands that size is relative as far as pack size because of the different variations and everything that's out there. The downside is it is an air mat. So if for some reason or whatever happens, if you do get an air leak, you're sleeping on the ground. Now, the good thing is most of these do have like Big Agnes, Nemo, Sea to Summit, all the name brand stuff. They do have lifetime warranties on most of them. Most of those come with a repair kit built in, and they come with an inflation sack. So the biggest thing I hear a lot of times is, well, how do I blow it up? And there's a bag in there that you actually catch the air and kind of squeeze the air into the pad to air it up.
Okay, that's because I don't like the sound of that. Like sat at the end of the day, just huffing into a really large mattress does not sound like luxury. Does not sound like Meister Deluxe to me.
No, it's not. So yeah, you're covered there. So even if you do have like a little electric pump or something, you can use that airbag to kind of inflate it as like a fail-safe.
I think because I'm taking with me obviously a tire inflator. I do think I have a pump, a little electric pump, because I'm a bougie girl.
Glad you brought up the tire inflator because a lot of people ask me about, well, don't they just make an adapter for a tire inflator? And they don't. And the reason is most tire inflators are air compressors. So they're designed for pressure, not volume. And I actually did a test and I made a video about it because so many people asked. It takes 15 minutes, which is actually shorter than I expected. I expected it to take like 30 or it was going to overheat and explode before it finished. It did not, but it did take 15 minutes to air up one of the air pads.
You showed those two mats. Which one would you think would be the best option with the pack size, with the varying temperatures for this trip and for trips like it?
If you don't have issues camping and sleeping on the ground, I'd go with the Rapide. The Rapide or even the Tensor, both of those are kind of side by side, battling it out rivals from brands because they're both about the same pack size, both have the same comfort, both have a good R value. This one's 4.8.
And what's like the top R value and the worst?
So the worst would be not necessarily zero, but zero. So that would be like a non-insulated pad. But technically, there is a little bit of an R factor there because just like windows that are double paned, there's a resistance value there because of the air gap, and so it's like 1, but we'll call it 0 just for the sake of argument. So no insulation, and that's good for like summertime. So that way you actually do dissipate some heat to the ground. If you do, if it's 75, you don't want to. I mean, I do it anyway because I'm not going to carry a bunch of different ones. I'll just buy the insulated and go with it. And you're not going to melt, but it's going to be noticeably warmer on your back or on the ground than it is here. So 4 to 5 range is good for 30 degrees. I'd say down to like 35. Once you get below freezing, you're dealing with like the frosty ground and all that. And looking at something a little bit higher R value would be good.
What's the highest?
So XPED does make some that are like 8, and even Nemo makes. They just came out with one 2 years ago. That's the extreme conditions, and it's made for camping in snow. It's got a HAR value of 8. XPED also makes like the Mega Mats, which are those really thick foam ones, and they have R values of like 10 and 12. So they go up higher and higher, and I'm sure there's some out there on the market that are even more than that.
I'm assuming that's for the kind of die-hard, the people that are really not the Rachels of the world. I probably do not need a 10 or a 12 of anything. For the average camper who's not doing anything extreme on either side, either way hot or way cold, about a 4 or a 5 is where you would put yourself on that.
Yep, that's the sweet spot for the R value. And like I said, that's pretty much early spring to late fall.
I know very little about tents anymore. I have set up tents, all different types of ones. I've done a lot of festivals, and like I said, I used to camp in places like the Brecon Beacons. I don't think I have invested in a new tent in years. One of the tents I own, I bought when I was like 16, and it's like this big, and it's really shit to put up. And the one time I put it up, I nearly gave up and just slept in it flat because it was just a terror. So what are we looking at these days in terms of ease and size and spider proofing? Obviously, very important. For a trip like this, what kind of things should I be looking at? Or if someone is trying to replicate a trip like this, what should they be considering?
Most people like a freestanding tent. Tents come in like the freestanding, which is just you put all the poles in there and you can pick it up and move it around. Semi-freestanding, where you can still pick it up and move it around, but to get the full volume of the tent, you've got to stake out the corners. And it uses less pole sets. So it makes it a little bit lighter, a little bit smaller to pack, but again, you're sacrificing convenience. And then that kind of goes for everything in camping gear. Like, the more convenient it is, it may be a little bit bigger, it may cost a little bit more, it may weigh a little bit more, but it's going to be more comfortable and convenient than something that's really small, light, and nimble that's going to sacrifice your convenience and your patience, possibly. I say go with the fully freestanding, again, for the sake of hassle, for the sake of your sanity, and then, especially if you're getting in late, being able to pack up or set it up and then, just go to bed. And I usually tell people, like I said before, if you've got a budget, focus on your sleep system more than anything else. And I hate to say this, but like realistically, if you buy a cheap tent from Walmart, it may be cheap, it may fall apart over a couple of nights, but it's going to keep you mostly dry for the first couple of times. Especially if you're trying this out for the first time and you're just going in the backyard, right? For this type of trip, longevity, cross country tours, stuff like that. It's nicer to get one of the better tents and the nicer brand tents because the quality's behind it, and it's going to last a lot longer. A lot of these brands have put in 20 to 50 years of research and development into their tents, and so it's not just let me just get this cut and paste cut this, template, make it here, sew it together, throw it over, okay, you're done. Like, there's a lot more that goes into making and designing tents than a lot of people give credit to. So this is a Big Agnes. This is the Copper Spur bike pack tent. So it's 12-inch pole segments. It comes in this nice dry bag. Actually, this year they changed the bag and they added these little loops to it. So you've got these little kind of volley strap kind of straps to it. In comparison, which makes it really easy to get in the panniers and bags versus like a regular backpacking style tent. This is about 20-inch pole sections, so 20 inch in length. Some of them are like, 24, 26, depending on what you get. And these are nylon tents as well, so they pack a little bit smaller and a little bit lighter. Nylon is more expensive. And by weight compared to polyester, it's stronger. So a lot of the polyester tents are bigger and thicker and heavier because of the weight they needed to be the same strength as a nylon tent. So kind of key considerations, the materials for pack size and weight, and the type of tent, being a dome style bike packing tent or a backpacking tent, and what you have room for. A lot of people, if they're trying to save a couple bucks, they'll go with the backpacking option and just find somewhere to put the poles and repack the poles some random place on the bike. Because that tent, if you take the pole out of the bag, you can compress it down and it just goes anywhere. Those are two-person tents. I generally tell people, for you and like your helmet and your boots that you don't want spiders in, to bring it inside the tent with you. To have that much room, go with the two-person tent, or it's like a 1 plus your gear, if you want to think of it that way. People who bring all of their gear in the tent with them. I discovered this after we opened the store and started talking to more and more riders, that they need a 3-person tent because they will bring literally every piece of gear, every piece of kit inside the tent. Not just the vestibule space outside the tent with the rain fly that kind of covers it, but like their riding jacket, their pants, their boots, their helmet, and then like a small bag.
Because I could get at you like, oh, I don't want the spiders or wet or whatever it is, but if you can just, keep as much on the bike as possible.
The only thing I do bring in my tent is my boots and my helmet, if I can't fit it in dry bags. Obviously the helmet's not going to fit in the dry bag, so that the helmet's like always in there. The boots, I have put them in the vestibule outside the tent, but then I turn my socks inside out and I put them over the boot so that way nothing crawls inside.
I think you're right. I think the boots, the helmet come in, and ideally everything else packs back onto the bike. I just think that keeps you a bit fresher, and there's something about bringing it all into the tent I find a little overcrowded. I don't know. But if you were to list like, hey, these are the top 4 or top 2 that you should look into.
A Big Agnes, MSR, and Nemo. Those are the 3 top brands, and those are the ones that actually make bike pack versions of their tents.
And say you're a beginner and you're not really sure what your preferences are, because your preference up until this point has been a house or some kind of brick structure. What are the top 5 considerations, or however many considerations, that you would be like, okay, if you're looking at these 3 brands, these are the considerations that you should probably think about? Because it's hard when you're coming in and you really don't know, and then you're looking at this influencer and they have been paid a fortune to promote something that maybe actually isn't what they use usually, and they're like, no, it's the best thing ever, and it has a half door, so you have to crawl in, and that's a real novel thing, and oh my god, it's my most favorite. And meanwhile they have a 6-door tent that they're actually secretly using, but you're totally sold because you're like, wow, they seem like they love it. So if we're looking at those and we're thinking about, actually, this is what's going to make your trip the most comfortable, or likely the most comfortable, how do we come at that? I would say
first things is deciding like freestanding or what style, design, then the size, because some of them are a little bit more narrow and wider. So the size.
So if you're bringing all that gear in and you have all that motorcycle kit, so we're looking at freestanding versus semi. Second is think about what you're actually bringing into the tent because it's not just you.
So 2 or 3 person, but even some of the 2-person tents are wider than others in the brands. So just looking at the specs, most of them are pretty competitive. Like most of the brands are getting pretty much where their designs are a little bit different, but all the specs are about the same. So your width and your height and your length and all that. So just depending on how tall you are. Some people are super tall and they can't fit in a tent. Some people are super short like me, and you can get like a little junior scout tent and sleep in it sideways.
So that's a good point. So I'm 5'8". My partner is around about 6'6". So probably not junior scout tent.
No, you can't use the junior scout tent for sleeping in.
But I do have very small feet, so I do wear kids' shoes.
There's a fun fact.
Yeah, back to the tent. The material, so that nylon v polyester debate.
Because there are some people who are very finicky on polyester versus nylon, and that also will go into your weight and pack size. So if you want a smaller packing and lighter tent, it's probably going to decide for you nylon over polyester. Although modern materials and modern design and manufacturing practices have got like the Nemo Dragonfly is their bike pack tent, and it is a blend of nylon and polyester. Again, because they're trying to reduce that sag from all the moisture. So yeah, materials that'll help pick up your pack size and your weight. And then if you want a bike pack versus a backpack, a backpack's going to have the long pole sections. So if you can figure out a spot on the bike, that could help. If not, go with a bike pack because it's already set. It's small. Even on that one, I don't leave it in that bag. I repack it into the bags so that way I can utilize all the packing space instead of just using it in what it comes with. I tell people to think outside of the stuff sack because a lot of people will get stuck in that stuff sack and just think that they have to use it and put it in the bag. But if you look at backpackers, most of the time they just shove everything into one backpack void and they just figure out how to cram it in there. So you can find a lot of extra space, and almost 2 liters of space could be saved just by repacking. I think one thing we missed on materials I should have covered is the amount of mesh, because there are some tents that have more mesh than others. Most tents, you'll see they've got that, they call it the bathtub bottom. So the floor comes up about 6 to 8 inches or so. So that's your bathtub bottom. So you don't have to worry about water getting in. And then they've got this splash panel, I think is what they call it, which is another layer of thin, whatever material, nylon or polyester, above the bathtub. And then you have your mesh. And sometimes that mesh panel is bigger or smaller, and the splash panel is bigger or smaller depending on the manufacturer. And that'll help with airflow. And so even though you're going to Alaska and it's going to be cold, these 3-season tents are essentially like an all-season tent. Like you don't need to worry about getting this expedition tent that's good for the cold weather or anything like that, because with high humidity especially, you want airflow through the tent. You don't want a tent that doesn't have airflow because all that moisture is just going to collect on the inside. And especially if you're changing from warm days to cold nights back to warm days, all that condensation is just going to build up, and you have to have airflow to get rid of that. You can't just have a tent that's all sealed up, unless you've got a hot tent with a stove and all that. But we're not doing that. So the features would be like venting, where the vents are and how it's set up. And again, this is coming down to like personal preference on, is the vent on the top or is it on the side? And again, all of them have air vents. All of them are going to have mesh. All of them are going to have airflow. I think it's going to come down mostly to the pack size, the weight, the size, the price point, the style. So Big Agnes and Nemo are asymmetrical. So when you lay it out, it's it's tapered from the head to the toe. So your head is kind of, a little bit higher. And then the same thing for the floor of the tent. The floor kind of trapezoidal, right? So wider at the head, narrow at the feet. Whereas the MSR Hubba Hubba in the bike pack version and the normal version is squared and rectangular all the way around. So there's no tapered, and it's a symmetrical tent. And so there's no, again, the head space isn't taller than the foot space or anything like that. It's just 100% even all the way around. Some people like that. Some people say it feels roomier on the inside just because of the way it's shaped and designed. And technically it is, because you get more foot space instead of having that taper like the other brands do.
Is there one that you think is preferable for most people, or is it just both are good? You just have to think about how you want to feel on the inside of the tent.
Honestly, I think it's personal preference, and like everybody looking at the specs and the details for everything, and kind of going through the nitty gritty details of each individual tent, the weight and the materials.
So let's talk about pillows.
Okay, yeah, we can dive into it.
It's amazing how, if your head is uncomfortable, what that can do to the entire sleep. Then when you wake up and your neck is bad, or you've kind of tried to, slug yourself into some horrible position to sleep. I think yeah, it's a good point. A pillow is just so important because it can make or break your entire night of sleep. And it's the same debate always of like packing space versus what you're actually going to use, and if it takes up a bit more space, then it's worth it. If you're going to use it and it's going to make the difference, then make space for it. What are your thoughts on inflatable?
I don't like the inflatable ones. 90% of them that are out there, I don't like them because they're just too. They make your head roll back and forth. They're crinkly in your ear, and they're too firm, and they don't have that like pillow like feel. There's one that's like our the favorite amongst everybody, and my personal favorite. It's the Nemo Pillow, and it's because it actually has an air bladder, but then it has a layer of foam on top. And so that layer of foam on top just gives you that extra little bit of comfort, and it doesn't make it feel like an air bladder anymore. It does pack a little bit bigger. I mean, well, be big, eh. But there are some people who don't need much for a pillow, and they like a firmer pillow. So, I mean, you can get some of these air pillows that are, tiny, 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 and that pack super small and just disappear into your bag. Yeah, the Nemo pillows. Yeah, I mean, it's across the board. Like everybody that's complained about sleeping that gets that one, they're content.
These are the things you should be considering when you're camping.
Any kind of light source. I mean, I carry multiple. Like I'll carry something that I can put in the tent, but I also have the headlamp because if you break down, a headlamp is kind of like the do-it-all. Even if you had one, but two is always better. I think it's one thing to make sure you really are truthful to yourself and what you're going to be doing and the type of riding you're doing. Keeping in mind that if you're on the trip, most likely if you forget something, you're going to have the opportunity to go through town and buy it. Like a lot of people, even myself included, are guilty about just in case packing. So on this trip, I mean, realistically, because you've done the 48 states, so do you camp or do you cook at camp realistically, or do you just kind of eat out the whole time?
I would be thinking stove for hot drink at night and in the morning. That's like more my thinking is like something that if you want that hot drink or it is cold and you want your hot water bottle or something like that, that you have something that you can make hot water on.
I mean, what you have would probably be perfect because it's a little pot. I'm sure there's room in there where it's designed to nest, so that way you can put the gas canister inside the pot and then put the stove on top, and then you've got this small little compact cook system, and then um, yeah, for your trip too, like a good for emergency. If it is cold, you can heat up water and warm yourself up. Worst case scenario.
I also think those things are just kind of good to have. Like if you're broken down by the side of the road and it could be hours, I do think on these trips it's a good idea to have something that you can heat something up in, because especially on these roads where you might only be 50 miles, but you're not walking it, and maybe you're on a road where no one's driving down it. So making sure you have snacks, making sure you have something where you can have a hot drink, because you might be waiting by your broken down bike for 2 hours, 3 hours, if it's raining, if it's cold, if it's any of those things.
Water. How do you usually deal with water, and what do you carry?
So I do have the Hydro Pack on my back that I tend to fill up wherever I can. But I also have a travel bottle that I've gone to places like India, Malaysia, Mexico, highly contaminated water. And it's a water filter system. It's like this big. You put the water in and then you push the filter through, and you can drink anything except for seawater. It cleans water really well. So I always carry that with me, even in the States, because say your first source of water is some weird restroom on the side of a road, you don't want to just drink straight from that tap. But if you put it through this system, and I've never gotten sick from it.
There are a lot of more advancements in far as like even like a soft flask that has that same filtering capacity in it, that you can scoop up a bunch of water and it compresses and compacts down way smaller. So you're not having to carry like a hard bottle around with you. And then those filters a lot of filters don't remove viruses. So you got to make sure you look for the filters that do actually remove the viruses as well, right?
I got viciously sick in Mexico once because I ate 3 grapes, forgetting that they're the dirtiest fruit because they get washed, obviously, and then the water goes into the grape and then you eat the grape. But using this water bottle, it completely just gets rid of all the viruses, everything. And I drank my way through all of those countries where you don't even open your mouth in the shower. This is the kind of thing that is it's a great piece of kit to have with you, because it just removes any doubt, because I cannot imagine anything worse than waiting, drinking water, and then being as sick as I was in Mexico in your motorcycle gear. You're trying to get out of it. It's not good.
I think that does cover all like the core stuff and like the really important things to carry, because I mean it's water, shelter, and sleep system.
Light, a little bit of light.
And light, yeah.
Top 4 or 5 tips for camping in bear country.
Keep everything out of the tent as much as possible when you're sleeping.
And that includes like perfumes, obviously, toothpaste, body washes. Are we talking like literally zero smell other than human smell?
I mean, yeah, essentially, like try to wash with the least amount of scent possible when you are, because any kind of smells. I mean, most of the soaps we have are like foreign anyway, so they're going to pick up on that. So keeping your smells neutral as possible with your soaps and everything else, keeping everything out of the tent. Like I said, I put my sleeping clothes in with my sleeping bag, so that way when I go to bed, I just put those on, go to bed, wake up, take those off, put my other clothes on, and then just pack them separately. So that way I'm trying not to do that cross-contamination.
If you do have snacks in your pack, hoist those up onto a tree a little way away from the tent, not over the tent. So take that elsewhere and hoist that up. So you need to take a rope with you, probably about 50 foot rope, I would think, to get that up on a branch.
There's contradictory things coming out now with all of that. Definitely don't leave it on the motorcycle. Like put it somewhere else away from the motorcycle. The general rule, especially for like leave no trace, if you're going to the bathroom outside or something, you go 200 yards away from, or I think it's 200 feet away from your camp, and 200 feet away from water and where all this. So like take all the food and put it somewhere else. The controversial things that have come up are that the chances of you being able to find a limb that goes out far enough from a tree, that's big enough and thick enough to carry and hoist up your food out of the way, isn't going to be enough for a bear not to climb the tree to climb out to get it.
This was what I was thinking. I'm like, have you seen how those guys can climb? Like if it's thick enough and big enough to hoist over, then it's thick enough and big enough for a bear to do their Winnie the Pooh trick down it and get the honey.
I've taken nylon cordage or paracord. I make it easy. I do paracord and a couple of carabiners, and that way you can kind of throw one up over it, and then your carabiner acts as like your pulley, and then you can just kind of throw it and then hoist up a bag. And I usually use like a dry bag or something. Again, if you can get a branch that's far enough away from the tree that if the bear were to climb on it, it won't get to it before the branch falls and breaks.
So if you can't do that, then basically just put it as far away from camp as possible and hope a bear doesn't raid your snack stash.
They make bear containers, which are, backpackers use those and they're hard-sided. You can look into those, and you can look into Ursac, I think, is the bear bags that they make nowadays. And again, putting it far away as possible. And it'll actually help for like other things like rodents and mice and whatever else you're getting into and chewing through your bags, because you can put it off to the side. And I think that the hoisting the food up out is more for those instances, because if if you've got the bag in the middle of the air, it's high enough off the ground and low enough from the branch, so they're not going to climb down the paracord to get to it. To you know what I mean? Like, so there's a lot of variables to kind of throw in. And then again, when you get into some points of Alaska, it's very oh, what's the word I'm thinking of? Tundra. You've got the tundra, so it's not like there's a bunch of trees or a bunch of availability for really a bunch of anything. It's kind of, which parts of Montana are like that, right? So it's just kind of like, well, there's no trees, there's no nothing. It's just kind of like, here you are.
I think probably the trick is, once you know you're camping, don't take a whole bunch of food and smelly stuff. Ultimately, we'll have some snacks and some things that smell. So I'll look into a little box system probably, and obviously carry bear spray. That's probably one of the accessories that we should say. You should absolutely have bear spray. If you're riding over the border, it has to be a specific make, US EPA or something. I'll verify that, because if it's not the right type of bear spray, they'll take it off you.
Always checking in with the locals. Like when you get somewhere and you know you're going to be camping, like even if you plan to camp in this area, check in and be like, hey, how active is this area right now? Like, it could be less, it could be more, and it may be the determining factor where you decide not to camp that night just because it's severely active and there's a lot going on. And then most of the time they're going to tell you like, hey, like I've been in campgrounds before where there's like, we're not having anybody camp on this section of the campground because the bear keeps going through this area. So we're just limiting interaction with people and then that possibility.
Okay, so I think we're looking in reasonable shape. I think we're kind of clear. I feel clear on how those things work and what to look for, and I am hopeful this will help other people looking at doing a similar level of camping to what I'm doing. Not a professional, not an expert, but just someone that really wants to be out in the nature with my bike on this trip, and to really experience those areas for all the beauty that they have.